This is Lillis Taylor with UAB's Arts and Medicine, and today we are going to be making your own DIY face mask, completely hand sewn. So let's get started. Let's get started on our hand sewn face mask. Here it is. This is the top. This is the bottom. And as you can see, this is all hand sewn. So you are going to be able to do this too. What will you need today? You need a 8.5 by 11 piece of copier paper, printer paper. You need a ruler or a straight edge, a pen, preferably not ballpoint. It'll be easier to write with. A twist tie or some kind of wire material if you want. That's kind of optional. Straight pins and a sharp needle. If you don't have straight pins, you might have some paper clips, and those can hold your work in place too. We need a safety pin, some embroidery floss, scissors, and an old t-shirt, and of course some kind of fabric that you are going to use to create this mask. So I have two pieces of fabric. I have one that does have a right side and a wrong side. The right side is the more colorful part where you can see the birds. And then I have this batik, which is kind of hard to tell what the right side and the wrong side is, so it's not as critical. We're going to use the birds as the front of the mask, as you can see, and then the batik as the lining. So go ahead and put your two pieces of fabric right sides together, and if your material is not already cut to 8.5 by 11, go ahead and stack your pieces of fabric, put a piece of paper on top, and just cut around the edges. You can trace the 8.5 by 11, but just cut your two pieces of fabric out to about that size. So right sides together, and I've already done this, but you're going to need to create two lines. These are your seam allowances here. This is a seam allowance there, and that's a seam allowance there. It's a 1/2 inch, and I think the easiest way to do this is to go ahead and on your piece of paper create a template. So I have a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch there, and then I will just, or you will just, line your fabric up and put a little mark there and there, and then on the other side, and then you can match your ruler up. Use your ruler to match up those lines and draw those lines to trace that out, your seam allowance. Now you'll see on the top of the mask, and I know it's the top because the birds are facing up, there is a hole. And that is going to be, when we finish stitching that, that's going to be the place where the filter material or the filter can slide in. So all that is happening here is it's the straight 1/2 inch line, but either these two lines are 4 inches each. So just draw a 4 inch line here and a 4 inch line there. Okay, I'm going to see you back here once I have sewn just the top. So I'm sewing these two lines, and I'm using back stitch, and I am using 3 pieces of embroidery floss. And for a refresher on back stitch and embroidery floss, how to peel it down to 3 strands, go ahead and look at our beginning basic stitching video. So I'll see you back here after I have sewn that top seam. Here is our top seam. It is sewn. You can barely see it on the side where the front of the mask, so I'm showing you on the lining side. And as you can see, there is that hole there that will be the place where we can put the filter in our mask. So now what you do is you open this up, And I'm going to lay this on the table. If you do not have an iron available to you, you are going to finger press the seam open. So I am just folding down those 2 pieces of fabric and pressing it open. So now is where we are going to put in our piece of wire that we have, and they suggest that you put this into the lining side. So basically you are going to find where the hole is and just kind of settle that there. And now I'm going to tack this into place. So I'll show you what that looks like when I get finished. Okay, our wire is in place. There is a little tack here, which is basically a whip stitch, and there is a little tack here. This is on the lining side, and so that you can see it caught the wire on either side, but I did leave some room so that if it wiggles around, it won't slide out of where it's tacked on. And then as you can see on the other side, you can see the tack marks on the lining side, but you can't see them on the front of the mask. So now we go ahead and we fold this back down, and we have to sew our other side of the mask where we have that whole seam allowance, that line drawn all the way across. So now you are going to go back stitch all the way across this line. See you when you're finished with that. Okay, a few notes. So we have stitched across the the bottom of the mask, and if your stitching doesn't look beautiful, that is okay. This is actually just to keep these 2 sides together and to make sure we don't have these frayed edges in where we can see them. So a note, I did use a pin and a paper clip to keep my work together while I was stitching, and I didn't mention that on the front end. So of course take all your little helping devices off. And then once you have gotten to this stage, you are going to turn this right side out. Okay, so when we do that, we're just kind of gently tugging on this. See, now these show that my stitches were a little too loose and far apart, and so I would kind of tighten your back stitch when you are doing this, but as you can see, it is doing the job that it needs to do. Okay, and then once you have this pulled right side out, you're just going to gently finger press that to get it nice and even. And here is the hole for our filter. Here is the top of the mask. Here is the bottom. And now we are going to draw lines on the front of the mask so that we can create our pleats. Okay, so we're going to draw lines so that we can get to this step. Okay, this is where your beautiful template comes into play again. Go ahead and place your mask on the template, and what you will see is that the 2 seam allowances are gone, and actually I have a little less than I should on either side. Okay, so now what you need to do is put 1, 2, 3, 4 marks here, and each of these marks is 1.5 inches. Okay, so really quickly, here's your 8.5 inches. This is 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then half and half, and hopefully that adds up to 8.5. Okay, so I will show you what my lines look like in a second. So I have my 1, 2, 3, 4 lines that are 1.5 inches apart here. And then I have them on this side too. You don't need to draw them the entire front of the mask. We're only using them so that we can line them up with each other. So take one side, and this is where you're going to need your safety pin, your straight pin or your paper clip. So take them and you are going to match that line to that line. And then fold the top up. Okay. Paper clip. Match this line to this line. And then fold it up. Straight pin. And you have your pleats on the side there. Okay, so that's one side. And you could, if you have enough pins or paper clips, you can go ahead and prep both sides and just make sure it's lining up. Or you can just go ahead and sew one side, then move your devices and do the other side. So how do we get started on sewing this? So what we need to do, because when this is stitched, we're going to fold it over to create the loop for our ties. So we're not actually going to see this stitching on the front of the mask. We are going to see it on the back. So what I would do is just kind of squeeze the edge here. It's like 1/4 of an inch. And we are still doing back stitch. And again, I'm not being too concerned about this stitch because this is just holding my pleats in place. So you're going to go ahead and do back stitch along that edge about 1/4 of an inch. Now I sewed right along here with my pin there, and I can even leave it there, but with the paper clip, if I keep sewing, it's actually going to get stuck in my stitching. So at this point I can hold the pleat while I'm stitching and remove that paper clip and finish this up. Go ahead and tie off. And again, I want to reiterate, this does not have to be beautiful. It will stay put. You won't believe it. Okay, and now I can cut this. And we can remove our pin. And see, it's staying put. And come over here and line those lines up. Now here's an important part. Okay, so when I did that, the pleat is going up. Make sure that's what's happening on this side, and it's not. So let's go and turn it right side up. Okay, match these lines together, and now my pleats are acting the same. So I can pin it and do the same thing here. Sometimes it just, takes thinking about something before you just go ahead and do it. Okay, so this is now ready for me to do the back stitch at about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so once you've sewn that, it will look like this. And I've got my pleats sewn on both sides. And they suggest, oh, okay, let's look at this. What is going on there? Some of my lining material got way far over on this side, and ooh, it barely got caught there. Well, we're not too worried about it because we are going to fold this in, but I don't like the way that looks, and I will be able to see it when I am finished. So as long as I am not cutting any of my stitching, I can kind of just clean this up. Okay, that makes me much happier. And now they suggest a 3/4 of an inch fold. So I'm going to fold this over. And you know what? That's an inch. And on our finish, I did about an inch. So I am going to do an inch, but and is that before you sew these down, you just fold over both sides, you know, the distance that you think you're going to do, and then, you know, your birds are facing up, so this is the top of your mask. Go ahead and try that on and see if it gives you good coverage. If it's too big, you can go in some. If it's too small, you can come out some, okay? So once you've done that and you've just kind of checked that the size is going to work. Where did my paper? Oh yeah, it's on my demo. Okay, so I'm going to get my paper clip. Okay, so we're going to come back here, and once we have checked that that size is good, we're going to pin this or paper clip it or both. And then the point of this is to both leave a nice opening here once it's stitched for your tie to go through, but also make sure that you're sewing this tightly enough that it's not going to pull out while you're wearing your mask. Okay, so I believe that this stitching that you did here is a great guide. I don't know if you can see that because the color is so, but you know, the stitching you did here is a great guide for where you should be stitching this fold over. Okay, so one little tip on my finished mask, when I did this sewing, I was paying attention to the back side and doing the back stitch on the back side, and so it made it look a little bit more crazy over here. So that's just, you know, if you're really worried about aesthetics, that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so we are going to sew this down. Now I went ahead and sewed both of the folds over, and I just wanted to say as I'm finishing this one here that you really want to reinforce the top and the bottom of this particular step in the mask making process, because this is where the most strain is going to occur, and if you do it now, you will not have to fix the mask later. And if you're making this for other people who may not have the supplies to fix their mask, you're just saving them some trouble now. So we tie this off and cut your thread, and you should have something that looks like this, okay? And now we're going to talk about the ties that go into each side of your mask. So now let's talk ties. This is the bottom of a t-shirt, and the good thing about having the bottom of the t-shirt is that it's got this reinforced place where the hem is on the t-shirt, which just makes your strap stronger. But if you're making several of these, then you know you're only going to have one of those layers. So basically I took a t-shirt, and let me tell you, if you can get an extra, the larger the shirt, the better. And I fold it in half, and I'm gonna cut about an inch off here. So I can go ahead and create a little line for me to cut. This doesn't have to be precise. So I made a line, and I'm just going to cut that. And now you have this loop, okay? So just cut one side of the loop and cut the other, and now you have two ties, okay? So this is the part where having a nice big safety pin is going to come in handy, but I was able to do it with this tiny little pin, so you can do it too. So fold over your tie, put the safety pin on the end of it, and then take a look at the way your pleats are going. So if they're going, you know, basically look at the top of the mask and then put the safety pin in the top. You can grab it in the middle and kind of make sure it's going where you need it to. And when you see it coming out the other side, you will have threaded your tie, okay? And we're leaving that loose on there because you don't know how you're gonna need this to move around on the mask. So just leave it loose. You don't have to tack it in place or anything. And then go ahead and do that to the other side. Now there's one last step to the mask pattern that we've been using, which is optional, and you can see it on this mask. It's pulling in some pleats to make like a chin pleat, and I will say that when I finished making the mask, before I did the chin pleat, it fit really well and I didn't have too many gaps. Now the chin pleat made it so that it was super secure around my face, but it actually kind of cut off, got a little tight under my neck. So we're not going to show you how to do this, but it is in the pattern that is linked in the description below. Okay, you guys have made your own DIY face mask, and now we just want to let you know that you should definitely wash this every time you wear it. And also it probably won't be strong enough to withstand a machine washer, but it can definitely be hand washed and then, you know, put to dry. And so if you make a couple, you can wash them and then let them dry overnight. Okay, so congratulations, you've made a face mask.